exchange series. There we go. This session is entitled Biology-Based Solutions for Water Management, and we have 3 speakers. So across 3 continents, so we're including the moderator, your moderator, we're covering 4 continents, so very international program. So our first speaker, I'm delighted to introduce, oh, hold on, let me pull up the right screen so I can tell you a little bit about Noha. Oh, sorry, having a technical issue here, just 1 second. At least you know it's live. Okay, so my very great pleasure to introduce Dr. Noha Abdel-Mottaleb, who received her PhD in civil engineering from the University of South Florida in December last year. Her research focuses on identifying relationships between the structure and performance of water distribution systems, networks, and identifying vulnerable and critical components of water distribution networks given their interdependencies with other infrastructure networks. She holds an MSc in Soil and Water Sciences from the University of Florida, and her undergraduate degree is from the University of Miami. So welcome, Noha. Are you able to share your screen? Here we go. You're already sharing your slides.
Thank you so much. So good to go, start? Or,
yeah, please take this.
All right. Hi, everyone. So as the title of this session hints at, we're going to be talking about bio-inspired design and how that can enhance potentially the performance of water distribution networks. I didn't do all this work by myself. My collaborators are listed, Dr. Sugishita, Dr. Masuda, and my PhD advisor, Dr. Zhejiang. So I noticed that the other 2 speakers in this session are going to be speaking about stormwater systems. So I had to include a slide about what are water distribution networks. Water distribution networks function to transmit water from some source or sources to end users. And so what we see here is the case study that we're going to be focusing on is the city of Tampa in Florida, in the US. And the water source, the main water source reservoir is highlighted in green, and we have 2 main pumps in the system. And this is just a snapshot of the major water source, which is the surface water. It's a river. And just for terminology that's going to be used in the rest of the presentation, the pipes in the water distribution network are sometimes referred to as links or edges in a network science perspective. And the end users, demand junctions or nodes, those are these dots, the blue dots. And so that's just important to keep in mind. So why is it important to think about and study enhancing the performance of water distribution networks, especially as of late, there are increased external and exogenous stressors that are acting on them, such as aging infrastructures combined with limited budgets, extreme weather variations due to climate change, and an increased awareness of the complex interactions that water distribution network components have with other infrastructure systems. In addition, sociopolitical dynamics that influence all of these factors and more. And so now let's bring in the bio-inspired part. What are some examples of biological flow networks where we can derive some inspiration from? The most important one I want you to keep in mind for today is the top right, which is slime mold. This has been extensively studied and is present in nature and has been cultivated in labs, and there are known growth models that have been developed for it. In addition, here is a root network on the bottom left, a leafination network, and vasculature, so capillaries and veins. These are just a few examples. And it's interesting to note that we can think of the stem or the vein leading into the capillaries as a water source. And we can think of the vein that is leading into the periphery of the leaf as a source as well. And we can think of the periphery of the leaf as the end users. And that just kind of draws a parallel in the structure, as we will talk about in the slide. So on the top left here, we have a few variations of leaf venation networks. And this is just to highlight the variability in structure in biological networks. However, the structure ultimately, we see a lot of similarity in biological flow networks with water distribution networks because of the shared function. And the function is ultimately to distribute flow from some source to the periphery of the network, the end users. However, the biological networks have evolved over a very long time, much longer than infrastructure systems, than urban infrastructure systems. And so perhaps we may gain insight into their into how they adapt and how they grow and how they manage all of the stressors that act on them as well. And in addition, the field of biological networks, network scientists and mathematicians have been studying the growth of biological networks for a very long time. And so there may be some information to be used from that field as well. And here I just want to make note that when we say bio-inspired design, it does not mean that we're just going to choose one organism and mimic that and design the network based on that one organism. We can gain insight from multiple organisms and then apply it, modify it, and apply it to an engineered system like a water distribution network. And that would be called system of systems bio-inspired design. So just wanted to highlight that, not that we're getting into it today. So the general process involves first identifying an engineering problem, then identifying solutions in biological organisms. So how is this problem not really a problem for a biological organism, even though it could be based on the structure, based on the stressors that are acting on the organism? And so in our usually engineers aren't going to go ahead and identify the solutions by studying the biological organisms themselves. We're going to go to the literature on biological flow networks and learn from there. And then after we identify the solution, we can go into the details of the mechanism. What is the mechanism behind the solution? And this can be thought of as like a growth rule, an adaptation, an optimality rule. And this is, again, through the literature on biological flow networks. Then we can modify these rules. We can modify these mechanisms for engineered systems, such as a water distribution network. So let's go into what is our engineering problem for water distribution networks. It's really because there's a trade-off involved. We want to minimize the damage that happens in the water distribution network under failure scenarios. And what's meant by damage here is the adverse impacts to the end users when a segment needs to be isolated because of a pipe break. So a pipe breaks, that's a failure. The segment needs to be isolated. Some people are going to not have water. So the undelivered water, the unsupplied water. And this can be called system demand shortfall. How's the system falling short and delivering the water that should be delivered? At the same time, we want to minimize cost. So we can't just minimize the damage by adding all of the redundancies that we want to, by adding lots of loops and increasing the pipe diameters, because we want to minimize the cost. And so that's the engineering problem. Now let's zoom in a little bit on performance and this idea of minimizing damage. That has to do with how accessible the end users are, how accessible they remain to water sources in the network. And so, like I mentioned a minute ago, that has to do with redundancy. And redundancies can be imparted in two ways in terms of transmission in a water distribution network, through increasing pipe diameters and through loops. Pipe diameters increase the capacity, and loops increase both the capacity and also the number of flow paths between the sources and the end users. And so let's go into what does evaluating this performance actually practically mean in our study. This is a snippet from the WaterGem software, and each row represents some failure scenario and a subsequently isolated segment. And then we have a measure of the system demand shortfall. So the higher it is, the lower the performance in the network. In this case, these segments don't have an adverse impact on the system. And so they're not really very critical. They don't cause the network to be considered very vulnerable and have a lot of damage when there's a failure. However, when these two segments are isolated due to some failure, we do see an adverse impact. So we can consider these segments as critical segments. And the more of these types of segments that we have in a network, the more vulnerable it is to failures, and the worse the performance is of the network. And so this performance is really to a large extent determined by the connectivity of pipes to each other. Again, the reachability, are there enough loops, and also the diameters, the ability of capacity to be provided. So looking at this small benchmark example, we have a reservoir 28 right here. We have junction 6. We have multiple flow paths. We can take this path right here to the reservoir. We can take this path right here. However, we don't know if there is enough, if this path is impacted, we don't know if there is enough capacity, if the diameters are long enough along this path, or if the diameters are wide enough or large enough, there's enough capacity to allow the flow, to allow the demand to be met using just one of the flow paths. So that's just kind of giving an idea of the type of problem that we're looking at. And so again, the case study is Tampa, Florida. So what did we do? This is the empirical network. So this is the original network. This is the piped network as it is for the city. This is the empirical topology and the empirical diameters of the network. And it has the node data, the edge weight, which is the diameters, the connectivity of the pipes. Then we take this data, we feed it of the connectivity of the network, and we feed it into a slime mold model to obtain updated diameter data. So now we have a new network with the same connectivity, the same location of pipes, but with updated diameters that are bio-inspired, hence the DB. Then we change the connectivity of the network. We build the network based on the node data, and this is using what we call a forward model. That is a step in the direction of bio-inspired, but it isn't bio-inspired per se, not yet. We're working on it. And we also apply the phi serum or the slime mold model to obtain the bio-inspired diameters. So this is now the third network with the forward model topology and bio-inspired diameters. So we have the original network, and we have two other ones that we want to compare to the original or the empirical Tampa water distribution network. And so again, just a reminder of what slime mold looks like. This is the model that represents its growth, and we're basically solving for this variable right here to get the updated diameters. I can answer questions about this after. And also these are two of the more important equations in the forward model that we used, which is a step, as I said, towards a bio-inspired model. And really it looks at optimizing between the cost of adding a pipe and the number, and the advantage of adding the pipe in terms of the number of flow paths, additional flow paths that are added to the network. And there's also a publication with the details of this forward model right here. And so we take these three networks, and then we evaluate some performance indicators and cost. So let's get into these results. The first thing we looked at to compare among the three networks are the pipe diameters, the pipe diameter distributions. And the major observation that we made was, okay, so for the bio-inspired diameter networks, the diameters tend to fall. There are more diameters. There are more pipes with diameters at the extreme. So more smaller and more larger diameters. So in orange and gray, we have more between 0 and 8 inches, and we have also more aggregate between 36 and 54 inches. So simple observation, but also we plotted the diameters on GIS, and and here the thickness of the pipe or the edge represents the diameter. And so something that became clear is when we have the forward model connectivity, we see that the pipe diameters actually change more gradually. And so that's an interesting finding, whereas we have more abrupt changes in diameters for the empirical connectivity. The other thing that we looked at is the system demand shortfall distribution, and the forward model topology with the bio-inspired diameters performed a lot better. It had less system demand shortfall over all of the failure scenarios that were tested. However, even though the bio-inspired diameters network had some differences, it performed very similar to the empirical network. And this table really highlights this, especially with the maximum system demand shortfall. We see it's very easy to see with the with the maximum, even though it's consistent for all of the other statistics as well. For 3 tested operational pressures, we see that the forward model connectivity with the bio-inspired diameters outperformed.
You can conclude. Sorry, you've got 1 minute.
Perfect. And however, the cost is a lot less. It's $20 million less to install piping for the forward model bio-inspired diameters. And so that's promising. And we can talk about this if there are questions. And so we conclude by saying that bio-inspired network design is promising based on the case study. However, there's a lot more work to integrate biological growth models, especially adding complexity such as budget constraints. And we also hope to test more water distribution networks. So thank you. And
thanks very much. That's a completely different world to my world, so that's super interesting to get an insight. Do we have any questions? I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Any questions? I'm just looking to see if we've got a hand up. I might just use chair's privilege then and then ask a question. I mean, sorry, this is a silly question, but
no such
am
thing.
I understanding it? Oh, hang on. Yeah, never know. Oh, hang on. Maria's got a hand up. She's probably got a better question than me.
Hi, Noah. Thank you so
Maria?
much for the presentation. It was great. I just have one question regarding the algorithm that you use. Is that, well, talking out of knowledge, absolutely, like I gotta read your paper, that algorithm is like biology inspired? Did you develop it? Is there somewhere in the literature we can take a look?
Yes, sorry. So which, let me, can you still see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, excellent. So let me, are you talking about for the slime mold diameters? Yeah. Okay, yes, this is actually an old paper in the biology. I'd be more than happy to share the reference. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I can share that with you and you can feel free to share it with the audience. That we didn't develop this. This has been developed and used extensively, like because slime mold has been studied a lot. And so yeah, this model is used a lot in the
and it's literature. The first time used for distribution, water distribution? Oh,
that's a really good question. So there's actually a team in Israel, Dr. Avi Ostfeld. They did something with slime mold and water distribution networks as well. However, it was modeled differently. So I don't think they use this particular model. So there's several different growth models, I think, that represent the growth of Physarum. But they're the only other people that are in the literature. They have a conference paper from 2017, I think, where they applied it to a couple of small benchmark networks. But yeah, so then what we did, what our team really developed was this growth model. And this is the reference that kind of goes into that. And it also discusses, by the way, the Physarum model. So
thank you so much, Noha. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your question.
I asked a question.
Yeah, go on then. I'm being a terrible chair, but it's really interesting to hear, so please do.
Thanks. Yeah, very nice, very interesting study. I'm really interested in this. As Maria knows me, I like asking like a crazy big picture question coming from nowhere. So forgive me, like, this is because it's so interesting. When I think about this analogy between like water distribution system and the bio-inspired system. So one thing I'm thinking the difference between the two is for water distribution system that is kind of constrained by the urban planning and how people live like that. But the bio, I would say like they are trying to get the highest efficiency to reach everywhere. So yeah, I'm just trying to like see how you think about this, and maybe even the urban planning need to be more efficiency, taking advantage of bio-inspired system. But yeah, how do you think about this?
Yeah, okay, I really like your question. It is really a big picture view. I agree completely. I think, and not just, I had an urban planning professor on my committee because yes, urban infrastructure systems are so intertwined with urban planning. They go hand in hand because of where development goes, that's where the network grows, so yes, and biological systems, they decide to grow based on certain rules, right? And so that is a limitation in terms of, can we actually realistically meet all of these rules when we're designing a water distribution network? No, probably not. However, this can be used to also, perhaps this can be used to help, not just for like the water distribution planning department, but for an urban planning perspective as well. If we know that our infrastructure systems will perform better if we develop them in this direction versus in this direction, that can give insight, and that can convince the people, the city planners, really, to help make the decision in one way or another. So I don't know if that answers it. Kind of.
Oh, sure. Thank you. It's very interesting research.
Yeah. We're all targeting the city planners from a different perspectives. Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm delighted to move on to the next speaker, who is Juliana Uribe Aguado. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. And he's going to talk to us about nature-based solutions for stormwater management in Bogota. Juliana is an environmental engineer with a master's degree in hydrology and water resource management from Alcalá de Henares University in Spain, and a master's degree in environmental engineering from Universidad de los Andes, Bogota in Colombia. She is currently enrolled in her PhD at the University of Los Andes, and is involved as a research assistant in the study nature-based solutions. And she's also worked as a hydrologist, consultant hydrologist. So extra delighted that you've time to come and talk to us today. For your presentation, I'll hand over the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lian. Well, as Lian says, my name is Juliana Uribe Aguado. I am engineering PhD student at Universidad de los Andes in Colombia. And today I would like to introduce to you two nature-based solutions for stormwater management and the work that we have been developed in Bogota. So in my presentation, I will show you the objective of my research, the main ideas behind the concept of nature-based solutions, the methodology, including the case study description and the planning strategies for MBS implementation and selection, the preliminary results of our analysis, and the work in progress and the future work. So the objective of my research is to develop a methodology to select nature-based solutions for stormwater management and quantify and economical evaluate the ecosystem services generation. So first, I would like to start by presenting the concept of nature-based solutions. According to European Commission, these are solutions that are inspired and supported by nature, which are cost-effective and simultaneously provide environmental, social, and economic benefits and help to build resilience. This is considered also an umbrella concept for other initiatives like green infrastructure, sustainable urban drainage systems, and best management practice. So that's the reason why many researchers have been done an effort to define and classify the NBS types according to their capacity to assess urban challenge. So here I present the Almenar classification in order to understand where we are. So according to these classifications, there are 3 types of NBS. The first one is related with all the management of existing ecosystems, all the policies of conservation of the nature, and there are solutions that they are not structural solutions. The second type are the solutions to restore ecosystems or the policies to greenery our cities or the revitalization of our nature or our peri-urban nature. And also there's a third category that is related with the creation of new ecosystems to develop at a specific process, like sustainable urban drainage systems. There is also another important factor involved in the concept of nature-based solutions, that is the generation of benefits, which can be translated in ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are aspects of ecosystems utilized to produce human well-being. So here I bring the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment categories that define 4 types of ecosystem services: provision, regulation, cultural, and support services. So here we can see that water regulation and water purification are in the regulation category of services. The case study of my research, it's located in Bogota and it's called El Reencuentro. That is considered a strategic zone of the city because connect important city-scale facilities, and 2 renewable master plans will be developed in that zone. This zone is also the case study selected by Bogota in the project EUPOLIS, in which the city participate as follower city. So the first phase of the methodology of EUPOLIS is used by my research to define the baseline of the case study. So the methodology of EUPOLIS project is based on 5 phases. In the first one, the goal is to identify the baseline status of the case study and also the urban challenges according to the stakeholders' needs. In the second phase, there is an analysis of the specific ecosystem services generation, and it's done by the introduction or the development of the goal-driven planning matrix. In the third phase, there is the design and the design of the selection of NBS selected, and also the monitoring plan. In the fourth phase, start the data collection by the citizens monitoring and also the environment monitoring. And the fourth phase, it's the scaling up process. So nowadays we are in the middle of the first and the second phase. We are developing the goal-driven planning matrix of our case study. So the goal-driven planning matrix involved the stakeholders' concerns, the project and case study description, the blue-green solutions that the stakeholder considers, the demo site characteristics and challenge, and the contextual indicators that help us to identify the baseline status. And these metrics provide a gap analysis of each of the case studies, a list of possible interventions according to the targets and goals of the project, a list of improvements, a list of evaluation indicators of ecosystem services, and also identify the site facilities. In addition, for NBS related to stormwater management, we develop a flexible and adaptable methodology to select the best NBS types for stormwater management. The methodology starts with a preliminary analysis of the relationship between NBS and ecosystem services generation. Then we develop a priority index to identify the areas with a low presence of ecosystem services. Then we identify the zones of the case study that have a high potential of ecosystem services generation. And then we do a feasibility analysis in which the physical and geometric characteristics of the case study are evaluated to identify the location or the potential location of these MBSs. And finally, we use an optimization tool to select the best NBS according to cost, benefits, and the rune of attribution. So here I present the main results of the first phases of the methodology. In Bogota, the goal-driven planning matrix highlights the main problems of the case study. First, there is a educational needs for NBS implementation. We also identify a problem with the urban mobility. There is a need of more pedestrian public space and also cycle paths. There is a high presence of green areas, but also there is a low provision of ecosystem services, mostly regulation ecosystem services. There is a high surface temperatures. There is a presence of air pollutions. There is also a presence of high presence of impervious zones with high runoff coefficients. And also there is a low sense of safety and woman vulnerability in the zone. So here I highlight the most relevant challenges according to environmental analysis. That there's less than 1 tree per 3 citizens. There is also a lot of presence of air pollution, of particulate matter, and a runoff management problem because there is a high presence of impermeable surface. So the MBS selected in the goal-driven planning matrix are the introduction of cycle paths to improve mobility, the implementation of a co-creation strategy to consider the citizens' needs, the improvement of green areas, and also there is a need of the implementation of NBSs for enhanced regulation services, biodiversity, stormwater management, and also cultural services. So the implementation of the NBS methodology for the selection and optimization of NBSs for stormwater management helps to identify the bioretention zones, tree boxes, dry extended retention basins, grass swales, and infiltration basins as the best options in the case study, showing a significant improvement in the benefits generation and the runoff attenuation. However, this methodology just brings a reference value of the benefits generated and does not consider the influence of co-benefits in the cost-benefit analysis. So that's the reason why we start to investigate the relationship between nature-based solutions for stormwater management and the ecosystem services generation, and the different methodologies for benefit quantification and valuation in literature. Here I present some preliminary results reviewed. Urban tree boxes or urban tree are the most studied, followed by constructed wetlands, ponds, and grass swales. We also identified not just the ecosystem services related with the NBSs, but also the type of services related and that these services related. And also we try to analyze the relationship among all the types of NBS that we are reviewing. So, for example, here we can see the main ecosystem services generated by 3 boxes that are air quality regulation, climate regulation, and water quality regulation. And the principle of this service researched in literature is the pollen allergies driven by the implementation of non-native species that generate health problems in the citizens. Another example, it's the constructed wetlands. There are multiple research about the water purification potential of this NBS, but also there is a concern about the health effects of the citizens that live near these systems. So I will skip the other types. If you want, you can ask me later. We also are trying to define the best methods to quantify the ecosystem services generation, because data collection of ecosystem services is a huge challenge and it's not common in practice. So we found out that most of the studies use a combination of modeling tools and also field data collection to quantify these benefits and evaluate these benefits at the final point. So as a conclusion and future work, we want to identify the benefits driven by other types of NBS. We also want to identify the method for NBS benefit quantification, adapt the methodology of suit selection to quantify the benefits and co-benefits by type of NBS, and evaluate ecosystem services provided by NBS for stormwater management in a cost-benefit analysis. So this is the reference, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, that was really interesting. I'd like to open the floor for questions. We're getting some applause there. Have we got any questions? I'd like to ask one about have you started your field work already?
No.
No.
We are in the phase like develop the methodology and the evaluation indicators of each ecosystem services to define the methodology to start the field measurements.
Okay, because I was going to ask, when you were talking about identifying zones with low ecosystem service delivery, how do you think you'll do that?
Okay, we develop a methodology to identify priority zones, and it's based on the physical characteristics of the public space. It's more like the provision of green areas in the zone. It's more like a qualitative approach to that priority zones according with the available information.
So you'll do a site walkover, and then you'll make observations about so kind of qualitative. So if there's a tree, then there's the potential to provide this and that.
Yes, we define like evaluation indicators of each of the ecosystem services, and we analyze by GIS technology the available of green areas, the K infrastructure relationship of the space. It's more like a space analysis by GIS, but we don't do at this point we don't do like field measurements at the moment.
So are you going to visit the sites?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've done a little bit of something similar, like push my own paper on you, but so there's quite a different sort of trying to use between using land use maps and what they show, and quite a lot was, I can't remember the kind of the hierarchy we went through using different types of maps, but then everything was basically general urbanized land use. And then when I visited the site, there was like a reservoir in North London. I didn't even know there was a reservoir there. And then lots of questions about, do you, for example, include window boxes? And do you know window boxes? Do you have those things you can have on your windowsill of your house that you can grow fruit and flowers and things that give people a lot of pleasure, that catch your eye? So cultural services, but then they wouldn't be picked up on a map as well. So yeah, a lot of but I guess you want a methodology that other people can use as well, but a lot of sort of things to think about between. So one sort of potential to be delivered, and then are they actually delivered, and then how do you evidence that? Yeah, so so I worked with a social scientist who then did some interviews with members of the community to see about what they liked and didn't like about their urban environment, to see if there was any overlap between provision of ecosystem services and what they liked and didn't like. So I can send you that paper, because there's lots of, but I did the same thing basically. I just kind of like walked around and sort of qualitatively identified ecosystem services. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. That will be
interesting and challenging.
Yes.
And also, does anybody else have a question? Should I, actually, I'm getting a bit short on time because I'm a terrible chair, but that was really interesting. Okay, if nobody else has got a question, then I think I'd like to move on to our final speaker. Well, thank you very much, Juliana. That was great. Our final speaker is Xiao, and I really hope I've pronounced your name correctly. He's a PhD student from Zhejiang University in China. He holds his undergraduate degree from Zhangjiaotong University, and his PhD focuses on applying the energy and chemical saving Anammox technique in domestic wastewater treatment. This is another completely new field for me, so I'm very much looking forward to hearing about it. He's looking to graduate in July, and he's already got a job lined up with the China Nuclear Mining Science and Technology Corporation as a wastewater engineer technologist. So Xiao, I can hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hello. Can you help me?
Yes, can hear you, and we can see your slides. Yeah.
Okay. Hello everyone. Thanks for your research, for your talkings, and the former ones they talk about the entire process of the whole process, and for me I focus on the end of the wastewater treatment, and today I'd like to give a talk about the municipal wastewater treatment by Anammox process. And there are 4 respects, including the status of carbon emission, the chance of carbon neutral wastewater treatment technologies, and the application of Anammox technology, as well as my research project. And currently, more and more researchers focus on the greenhouse effect, and the up-to-date research showed that carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide were main greenhouse gas in global, while wastewater treatment make a considerable contribution to carbon emission. In China, we tried to achieve carbon neutral in 2060. So in order to achieve carbon neutral as soon as possible, it's necessary to identify the key factors of carbon emission. And according to the life cycle assessment of carbon footprint in municipal wastewater plants, nitrous oxide, which is also called N2O, serves as a dominant source of direct carbon emission, and it is generated from the bioreactors, including nitrification and denitrification process. And another factor is the indirect energy, which is for example, the aeration composed of the main energy cost, and is so in short, in order to achieve carbon neutral, it's necessary to reduce the NO2 emission as well as the oxygen cost. So carbon neutrality means having a balance between emitting carbon and absorbing carbon from the atmosphere in carbon sinks. Statistically, we found that the energy in wastewater is much higher than the energy cost for a treatment. Therefore, it's feasible to achieve carbon neutral in the wastewater treatment. So on the one hand, the advanced equipment should be employed for the recovery of resource and energy. On the other hand, intelligent operation and novel technology should be employed to reduce the energy cost. And by employing both, we can achieve the energy, we can achieve the recycle of energy. Currently, researchers focus on develop energy saving technology in wastewater treatments, including Anammox, algae, and sulfur-based denitrification. These technologies is useful for nitrogen removal, and the anaerobic global granular reactor and ANMBR. This tool is used for carbon capture. And by comparison, compared to the conventional technology, Anammox technology can achieve more economic benefits for nitrogen removal due to its high efficiency, including the less occupied area and the less money cost. Moreover, thermal hydrolysis and anaerobic digestions can be used for the sludge treatment. And these innovative technologies can be combined for efficient recovery of energy and resource in wastewater treatment. So I'd like to give a deep introduction to the Anammox. Anammox, which is called anaerobic ammonia oxidation, it's a novel bioprocess for nitrogen transformation, different from nitrification and denitrification. Anammox bacteria can directly transform ammonia and nitrite into nitrogen. And these special bacteria also exert unique characteristics. They live as aggregates, and it has a unique organelle, which is called Anammoxan. Also, it appears red due to the numerous intracellular cytochrome. Therefore, it's also called red bacteria by many engineers. And compared to the conventional nitrification and denitrification process, by employing Anammox, we can achieve the less oxygen cost, less organic cost, and less sludge products. Moreover, the greenhouse gas emission is largely reduced. That's why more and more researchers in the world both focus on the full-scale application of Anammox. Notably, the inoculum of Anammox bacteria is precious and expensive. Thus, more detailed message on the lifestyle of Anammox were required to improve its operation management. Currently, Anammox has been widely applied in high-strength ammonia wastewater treatment, including swine and photovoltaic industrial wastewater and anaerobic digestion supernatant. And the characteristic is that it contains high concentration of ammonia and low organics. However, it should be noted that the inference should be contains little heavy metal and antibiotics, which is bad to Anammox bacteria. Notably, moreover, in order to achieve the biomass retention of Anammox, which is slow growth, there are 3 types of Anammox technology, which is generally applied in the side-stream Anammox treatment. The first one is sequencing batch reactor. It's called SBR, and it's one stage, and the strength is that it has the low shock resistance. However, it also required the high automatization, which is costly. The second one is called UASB. The advanced is that it has high sludge load, which means it can achieve high nitrogen loading. However, the weakness is that it's low shock sensitivity. And the third one is called moving bed biofilm reactor, which is also called MBBR. And this technology is one stage, and it can achieve the low shock resistance. Moreover, another advantage is that it can be used through the mainstream treatment, which is very popular nowadays. Next, we can talk to the mainstream wastewater. The mainstream is represent the most wastewater in the municipal wastewater. It is generally the ammonia concentration is low and the temperature is low. Moreover, in China, the influent organics in the municipal wastewater is significantly lower than that in USA and other countries. Therefore, in the mainstream wastewater treatment, the Anammox technology meet some of the challenges. For example, Anammox it exerts a slow growth. The growth rate is 7 to 12 days, and it requires a high temperature. Moreover, in the municipal wastewater, there weren't nitrite in the infant. Therefore, it should be combined with the partial nitritation and partial denitrification to meet the nitrite supply. And nowadays, there are 3 cases that the mainstream Anammox can be successfully applied, which can bring us some ideas. The first case is the stress wastewater treatment in Austria. It was the side stream and mainstream Anammox can be both applied in the industry, and the side stream can serve as the inocular. It can bring the inoculant to the mainstream to keep the Anammox bacteria to achieve the high biomass retention, and for the nitrogen removal accessibility. And in case 2 is the Changyi wastewater treatments in Singapore, and it attacks step-fed and intermittent aeration waste, and it attacks also the partial nitritation and Anammox. And this technology, and it can achieve the Anammox. The Anammox bacteria can achieve the total nitrogen loss by 50%. And in the third case is the USA blue plain wastewater treatments, different from the partial nitritation and Anammox. It attacks the partial denitrification and combined with Anammox because the PNA technology is not stable, but PDA technology is more stable and can achieve the less NO2 emission. So it's more feasible for the carbon neutral in the future. And in this wastewater treatments, it use the primary sludge aeration fermentation to produce the organics rather than by employing the COD and to control the effluent nitrate, it can achieve the PD efficiency around 50% and achieve the efficient nitrogen removal. In short, in order to achieve the mainstream Anammox, the successful of mainstream Anammox, we should to achieve the efficient biomass retention and the stable nitrite productions. So there are 3 ways to achieve that. In our research, we also aim to achieve the success of mainstream the mainstream Anammox application. So the first, we try to achieve the rapid startup of mainstream Anammox biofilm system, and we applied the stepwise influent nitrogen strategy, and nowadays it's the shortest time to start up mainstream Anammox MBBR, and we found that the most important species that can help to promote the biofilm formation. Moreover, we discovered the biofilm development mechanism, and we construct a biofilm development model to guide the parameters of optimization in this study. And moreover, after the biomass retention, we also tried to construct a FPDA system for highly efficient and stable nitrogen removal. It aims at to achieve the stable nitrite productions, and we found that we achieved the mainstream FPDR and the nitrogen removal at 80%, and we achieved the stable Anammox retention. Moreover, we found that the predominant heterotrophs can help Anammox to promote its growth with essential necessities. And in conclusion, we found that the carbon neutral in municipal wastewater treatments require more innovative technologies, and Anammox is an energy-saving nitrogen removal technology, which is widely applied in high-strength ammonium wastewater treatment, but it also should be focused in the mainstream treatment and focusing on the stress tolerance and retention of Anammox under the mainstream conditions. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. That was super interesting. Again, another world for me. So this is lovely to have some master classes. Have we got any questions for Rui? Oh, yes, Zhu.
Hi, Rui, thank you for your presentation. Like Dr. Lundy, this is not my research area, but very interesting talk. So I'm just wondering, like the carbon neutral is obviously a very big overarching goal for the whole nation of China and the whole world, right? So I'm wondering that just regarding the wastewater treatment plant, is there any policy in China or other countries, as you know, that is implementing this, or like what are the, say, the driving forces are, you know, pushing the like municipalities and the wastewater treatment plant, you know, to adopt such technologies?
Oh, okay, thank you. The neutral is now it's very popular because it meets the the chance of the world. And I know, as far as I know, in China, because the President Xi can set aims that we need to achieve the carbon neutral in 2016. So the others, the government and the other industry both try to achieve this meet. So although nowadays for example in municipal wastewater treatments, nowadays there is no any standards for the carbon emission. However, it's planning to. Now we trying to make some plans, and the researchers are trying to give a survey about the carbon emission in all around the China in wastewater treatments. And after knowing the status, we trying to the next step is how to update to achieve the carbon neutral in wastewater treatment. And I think there will be some standards for the whole WWTP optation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Have we got? I've probably got time for. I know we're running over. I'm a terrible chair. But have we got any more questions? No questions. Well, I think therefore I'm only 4 minutes over. So I think with that, I'd like to draw this session to a close. I'd really like to thank the speakers. It's super interesting to hear about a diverse range of fields, and to see the enthusiasm and the knowledge of all the next generation coming through. And I hope to have the chance to meet you all in person at a conference sometime soon. So thanks very much again, and thanks to all the attendees. Maria, shall I hand back to you for a final word?
Thank you, Dr. Lundy. No, I think that's pretty much. Thank you so much for your work, and thank you everyone for coming. Just for you to know, the video of this recording is going to be uploaded into in YouTube in the channel of the Global Science Exchange, and that will definitely be helpful for more people to have access to this. As you know, it was very tricky. It's 8 p.m. in China. Here in the East Coast is like 4 a.m. in the morning. So there's not a lot of people joining, of course, right now. So yeah, it's complicated, and we really appreciate how flexible you have been about this. It's about bringing international community together and learning from each other. So we really appreciate you coming. Dr. Lundy, thank you for your help. Thank you for being an awesome moderator. And I think that's pretty much all. Hope to see you real soon in person.
Yes. Yes. Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.